5:30. Yeah, let's get started. Good evening. We are here for the Waco MPO's public information meeting regarding performance targets related to safety for both roadway as well as public transportation system, which is Waco Transit for the Waco region. It is Monday, January 29th. It is 5:30 p.m. And we will get started with this presentation, and then we will follow up with any question or comment that anyone might have. We will also have a recording of this presentation online, and if anyone is interested in viewing this presentation and sending us a comment, we will receive them as well. Let's move to the next slide. So welcome, and we have a QR code that you can use to access all the meeting material on your mobile device or your computer, and this allows us to share all the information related to this public meeting, or for that matter, any MPO document as easily as possible. Next slide. So today we will talk briefly about what is Waco MPO. We'll follow that up with what the roadway safety targets are, how they get set. We will similarly have a discussion about public transportation safety targets, all the public comment opportunities that we have in this regard on an annual basis, and we'll follow up with questions and answers, if any. So our main role is to provide the local input into the long-term regional transportation decision, which follows the 3C process of cooperative, continuous, and comprehensive. And using that transportation planning process, we prioritize regionally significant projects that have a realistic chance of getting funded at some future date, whether it is part of a short-term plan or a long-term plan. We also ensure that there is a regional planning process involved with how federal highway and transit funds are used in the region, which also allows us to identify what the priorities of the local governments as well as TxDOTs are. And finally, it also allows us to look at the future of our transportation network. What does it need to look like, and how do we ensure that the future of transportation system is available for all users, regardless of their ability or income or locations. Next slide. In a visual form, this is the transportation planning process that Waco MPO follows, along with the suggested. This is the suggested planning process that Federal High Administration requires of all the regional planning entities. We typically begin with a strategic planning process, which sets the regional vision and goals, in which we also identify the alternative improvement strategies. Eventually, after evaluation and prioritization, it yields a long-range plan development, which is the MTP, which then further allows us to identify the projects that can be accomplished in the short term that have funding allocated to them, which results in a short-range transportation improvement program, which is the TIP. And once we have instituted the TIP on an annual basis, we also measure the system's operations using performance management of targets such as safety, condition of our transportation assets, as well as reliability of roadways and transit. We cover all of McLennan County, and MPOs are required of all the urban areas that have more than 50,000 people in it. And we coordinate and build consensus regarding the plan and funding the different transportation projects. For Waco MPO, we are a 20-member policy board that is the MPO. And we also have a 19-member technical advisory committee and 4 work groups. And as I mentioned earlier, it covers all of McLennan County. Before we get into roadway safety, I would like to, along with our 20-member policy board and 19-member technical advisory committee, we also have a small staff that works at the MPO to put all of this together. And of 5 of us, 4 of us are here in this room: Nora Roy, Annette Polk, Arthur Chambers, and my name is Mukesh Kumar. And so now we will get into roadway safety. So roadway safety lately has been articulated as a significant public health concern, and the total number of people who end up dying in fatalities or suffer serious injuries is alarmingly high. And we know that this is one of the situations in which we must use the roads and sidewalks to get to work, schools, stores, and and complete our daily lives. However, not all the trips are without incident, and the incident sometimes can be as deadly as a fatality, as serious as serious injuries, which often means some very serious medical condition that one has to live with. Then we also, at the same time, we also noticed that this is a problem that is not only locally here, but across the world. But more than 1 million people around the world are killed each year, and over 20 million people are seriously injured across the world. And these kinds of crashes do not just affect one type of road user, but vehicle drivers as well as the people in the vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, or anyone else who happens to be on the street can be a victim. Now, all the public agencies in the United States and many other parts of the world as well work to ensure that people do arrive at their destinations without incident, which results in a safer outcome for our roadway network. So what do we typically do as public agencies to reduce crashes? So first thing we do is to measure what the safety and severity of crashes are. Then we try to understand the factors that cause the roadway accidents. And when we try to understand the factors, we go all the way from the infrastructure to vehicle design to human behavior. And one of the more current research shows that part of the human behavior challenges has quite a bit to do with, as society, the level of stress that people feel before they get into a vehicle to drive can potentially lead to very negative outcomes resulting in fatality or serious injuries. This is something new, but at the same time, we have known for a long time that the design of the infrastructure itself makes a difference. And lately, it has also become we have become acutely aware that vehicle designs make quite a bit of difference to who suffers, how can we change the design to make our roadways safer. We also recommend practices to reduce the chance of crashes using whatever knowledge and the technology we have, which include cameras and sensors. Any enforcement mechanism, as well as landscaping and the contextual improvement related practices that helps with safety. Measurement of roadway safety can be done in many different ways, but the one we are going to be presenting on that we will be discussing today largely relates to fatalities, severe crashes, and normalized, of course, 100 million miles traveled. And these are typically they were set under the FAST Act, in which we measure both the number, the rate, and the severity of crashes. And we typically concern, at least according to FAST Act, with fatality and serious injuries cases. We set these performance targets each year, and based on these targets, we try to program and plan accordingly. And we also identify the locations that would demonstrate a history of crashes. And however, we also recognize that, and it's not just the locality or highly location-specific design that makes a difference to crashes or fatality. We also look at how can we improve safety across the system itself. And in order to do that, we prioritize funding so that safety improvements could be observed across the entire system. Next slide. So in case of TxDOT, as this is very similar to all other state DOTs, we measure the number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, and then we normalize them by 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And then we also measure the total number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. And one of the things we do is that we try to understand these things not only in terms of location-specific criteria based on engineering and design of the roadway infrastructure, but also in terms of why we end up with system-wide outcomes the way we do. And quite often it has a lot to do with a system-wide characteristic, so that it's not just this location-specific approach that we take. We also try to understand what could we be changing across the entire system. So let's get to the numbers. For the TxDOT 2024, the 5-year averages, for 2024, the targets are set at 3,046 as the total number of fatalities across the state, which translates to rate of fatality of 1.14. Number of serious injuries at 18,242, which translates to serious injury rate of 6.77, and the total number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries at 2,360. According to the current bipartisan infrastructure law, the future targets cannot be lower than what the last year targets were. And so as you can see that in 2023, the targets were 17,000 for the number of serious injuries. That was lower than 18,000 in 2024. 6.39 is lower than 6.77. And so all the ones with asterisks are become the target by law. So what that means is that for TxDOT 2024, 5-year average targets are going to be 3,046 for number of fatalities, 1.14 for rate of fatalities, but 17,062 for number of serious injuries, 6.39 for serious injury rate, and 2,357 as the target for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. One of the items we would like to clarify here that these are typically the ceilings that we want to, we don't want to reach. We would ideally like to be much lower than these numbers. Next slide. Based on our analysis for McLennan County, all the mapping that we did, you will notice that our fatal injuries are highly dispersed across the county, and we see almost equal distribution across a central part of McLennan County that covers most of city of Waco and the surrounding communities, but a very equal number of fatalities actually occur on rural roads. The brown dots are suspected serious injuries, then the yellow dots are the suspected minor injuries. These are possible injuries, and a lot of them are property damage only types of accidents. But the most concerning parts on this map are really what is represented in the red dots that are fatalities, and the brown dots that where we think that serious injuries occurred. Next slide. So based on the TxDOT roadway target and based on our analysis, we are proposing that for McLennan County in 2024, for 2024, we are expecting our targets to be 29 for total number of fatalities, 0.95 for rate of fatalities, number of serious injuries 252, serious injury rate at 8.30, and the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries as 26. And so these numbers are lower than the 2023 numbers, and so this is the proposed target for the year 2024 for McLennan County, which is the same as the target for the Waco MPO. Now, a bit of analysis. We wanted to walk us with some of the in-house work we do. One of the very important ways that that roadways impact safety directly is in their very design. And in many urban areas, especially, we notice the prevalence of stroads, which is a combination of street and roads in which the roadway serves neither as a street nor as a road. It does not get anyone somewhere fast, but at the same time, it also does not allow people to access the amenities or whatever businesses or housing or any other entities that exist on the sites very easily without the use of a car. Typically, what we end up looking at are some of the conflicts, and higher the number of conflicts at a higher speed, higher the risk for incidents. Visibility makes quite a bit of difference. Traffic volume actually works differently. At a slower speed, traffic volume, in fact, a higher traffic volume in congested areas, in fact, some of the safest places. Infrastructure design makes a lot of difference, especially designs of bike lanes, sidewalks, crosswalks, as well as traffic and stop signs when appropriately deployed make a good bit of difference. We're also aware that crossing guard presence often gives us a false sense of security when objectively viewed, it does not result in better safety outcomes. Speed bumps also sometimes manage, in popular image, speed bumps help quite a bit, but more often than not, they are not related with safety. Land use makes quite a bit of difference as well. So neighborhood streets where the setbacks are closer to the street, as well as streets are designed with more tree canopies, tend to promote safer driving behavior in those areas and keep the neighborhood safer. Here's a crosstab of the matrix for objectively verifiable traffic safety conditions for collisions involving children, and we juxtapose it with the perceived traffic safety. And the items that jump up quite immediately are that we tend to think of crossing guard locations as one of the safer ways of helping children cross streets and avoid collision with traffic, but that is not true and that's borne by objectively verifiable data. Similarly, we noticed that high population density may be perceived as higher traffic safety, but it has no relationship at all with whether it is quite safe or not. One of the items where we see that there is a high agreement are the presence of sidewalks. So sidewalks can be are not only perceived to be safe, but more often they are safe. Another important one we notice is that where there is agreement is that high vehicle or traffic speed, high traffic volume, as well as areas closer to school are perceived to be problematic for safety, and they can also be objectively verified to be unsafe. In McLennan County, when we look at the data, what we notice is that the highest causal factor for a lot of our incidents are failure to control speed, followed by driver inattention, failure to yield right of way. And one of the things we would notice is that failure to control speed quite often is not necessarily completely away from driver distraction or driver inattention. A lot of these two categories are often catch-all terms that end up covering a vast range of factors that we often need to look at. What we do know is that speed makes a lot of difference. At the higher speed, we know that the fatalities and severe crashes are a lot more common and highly probable. Land use and neighborhood design make quite a bit of difference about overall control of the speed, as well as ensuring that people are paying more attention. Drugs and drinking are often related, major contributing factors to drivers' inattention. But driver inattention generally is a very broad term, and it often ends up catching many items that can't necessarily be verified in terms of what exactly was the factor or causing the driver inattention. Sometimes it can be cell phone uses of different types. Sometimes it can be even presence of other people in the vehicle itself, or sometimes it can be something as simple as being agitated with road rage or due to other stress factors, or sometimes it can be driver's inattention because something as simple as lack of sleep. If Vision Zero scenario were to be realistic, in some ways what we are looking at, that if we wanted to do a 5% reduction in for 2050, what we would notice for McLennan County is that we would expect, with 5% annual reduction, the rate to be 7.51, and that will be roughly about 8 fatalities per year. However, with a 10% reduction, we can actually get to 1.74, which is 2 fatalities per year. Similarly, for serious injuries, if we were to reduce our targets by 5% each year and succeed in achieving them, we will set about 66 for serious injuries for the year 2050 and 15.29 at 10% reduction for the year 2050. These are a lot more realistic targets if we wanted to achieve the Vision Zero scenario by 2050. So, supporting the TxDOT's statewide roadway safety targets, one of the questions related to this is always that first we have to identify what will it actually take for us to get to zero fatality by 2050. And what is clear is that this is not an issue that exists only at the local or regional level. It's an issue that must be dealt nationally, statewide, as well as locally. And in order to achieve that, we are also aware that using engineering, design and engineering, as well as changing in our policies, programs, and education campaigns, they're all very important steps to take in order to achieve Vision Zero goals by 2050. Some of the examples of what we are doing at the Waco MPO to support the statewide targets, and obviously our activities are limited to McLennan County, but what happens in each of the county ultimately ends up affecting the overall numbers for Texas. And so on our part, there are several things we're doing. There are 3 buckets of things that we are interested in doing that are underway. The very important one is that we are revising our project selection criteria for MTP 2050, in which the MTP itself is aimed at reducing fatality and serious injuries for all modes. And the way we are considering it, instead of treating safety only as one of the evaluation criteria. We're trying to integrate it into the overall project selection criteria itself. We're also examining the modal choices, travel time, land use connections, and crash hotspots. And part of this analysis often is that we know that almost a quarter of our trips generated in McLennan County are of distance shorter than 1 mile. And so by looking at the modal choices for those really short trips, we can in fact succeed in reducing the not only overall lane miles, but also reducing the total amount of single occupancy vehicle that are on the road, which often are involved in these fatalities and serious crashes. We are also aiming to plan and program projects in our MTP and TIP that contribute to accomplishment of those statewide targets. Some of the very specific examples, those are the 3 large list of items. So the very specific things we're doing is that in 2022, we applied and received a Safe Street for All grant, and that grant is being used to develop an MPO comprehensive safety action plan. We also received a 2023 SS4A grant for planning and demonstration project, which will be underway toward the middle of this year. And within the region next year, we will begin to see some of the demonstration projects, especially on some of our problematic areas such as Valley Mills Drive, LaSalle Avenue, Loop 340 in Belmead between 84 and I-35, as well as areas in city of Robinson and Hewitt Drive in city of Hewitt in front of Midway, in Midway Middle School and High School. We also participate in the TxDOT Safety Task Force. So what can we do to help TxDOT to maintain a safe roadway network? By ensuring that our investment priorities are linked with the safety performance goals. We work to understand what the local concerns are that affect our region, as well as we ensure that we can include projects and strategies in our plans and programs that help with overall safer roadway network. And we obviously do this at both levels. There are location-specific decisions we make for projects, as well as we also consider projects that will improve the safety conditions for the overall system itself. Now we will move to public transportation safety. Public transportation for us largely means Waco transit. And one of the things that jumps out at us very quickly is that public transportation is 10 times safer per mile than traveling by a car. And we do use public transportation, not at the same level that we would like to see, but it gets used quite a bit to get to work, school, stores, and home. However, even in public transportation cases, not every trip is without accident. And one of the things that is important to note is that each year there are about 16 fatalities in the state of Texas involving public transit buses, and about 700 serious injuries involving public transit vehicles. And in both of those cases, if you contrast them with the overall roadway safety, these are extremely small numbers. So public transit, in that sense, is not only 10 times safer, it is significantly safer than being in single occupancy vehicles. And public agencies in the United States, we work to ensure that people who use them, public transportation, they do get to their destination without any incident. So how do we do this? And what can we do to do this? So similar to the roadway safety, we again measure the safety and severity of crashes. We try to make sense of the factors that cause these accidents, and that can relate everything from mechanical failure to human behavior to the type of roadway infrastructure at which public transit has to operate. We also recommend practices to effectively and proactively manage what internally we can control the safety risks. We also try to predict and reduce the frequency of these safety events. So, but similar to roadway safety, FAST Act also set the targets on two different measures, three different measures. One is the total number of fatality, the rate and the severity of crashes, as well as total mechanical failures that we measure for public transit agencies. We set these targets to not only minimize the crashes, but also ensure that mechanical issues do not occur on these vehicles. It often means that we have to adjust the vehicle maintenance and driver training programs, and similar to other roadway safety targets, using public transportation safety targets, we prioritize funding for safety improvements in the transit system. So similar to the previous one, we again measure the number of fatalities and serious injuries. We also then normalize them by vehicle revenue mile traveled. We also look at the total number of safety events and major mechanical failures. And similar to roadway safety, we look at it as a system-wide challenge that we must address at both the system-wide level as well as very specific vehicular level, or very specifically mechanical maintenance and the asset management level of the Waco Transit itself. So for 2024, the 3 columns on the left, they relate to safety performance targets for fixed route. These are typically the large buses. And on the right-hand side, the 3 columns represent demand response performance targets. We are expecting no fatalities at all in the Waco Transit in either fixed route or the demand response. We are expecting roughly about 2.6, that's the target for 2024, for injury cases, and 1 in the demand response system. Rate of injuries are almost close to 0. And the total number of safety events, we expect it to be 2.2 for fixed route, 2.8 for demand response system, which again, in terms of rate, is very close to 0. Our system reliability, based on the age of the vehicle, we're expecting it to be 33,980. And that's the total number for total vehicle mile traveled. And the target for demand response is 39,920. So what can we do about it? And so similar to other cases, we can link our investment priorities to Waco Transit Safety Performance Goal to ensure that Waco Transit is a very safe mode of travel. And we not only try to make sense of the data that exists, but we also prioritize projects and strategies in our plans and programs to ensure that transit operates safely. So the public comment opportunities that we have for these targets for 2024 are, so our solicitation of comments began today on January 29th, and it will end on February 7th. You can submit your comment on the link provided here. The informational meeting is what we are in today at 5:30 p.m. The Technical Advisory Committee will review and make its recommendation to the Policy Board on February 1. Any comment we receive by February 1 will include them for consideration for the Technical Advisory Committee, and then followed by public policy, our Waco MPO Policy Board that will conduct public hearing on these matters on during its February 15th meeting. And based on those public hearing, public comments, and our presentation, Policy Board will either adopt or revise these targets on February 15, 2024. So any questions, comments, ideas that you might have, you can pose them now. You can also call us at 254-750-5650, or you can email us at mpo@wacotx.gov. You can also send us comment via Facebook and LinkedIn. We can accept comments in any language, and the comment form is accessible from the MPO website. But comment form is not the only form. You can directly email us or call us as well.